Hello, welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. Today, James and I are talking about the latest two games in the IPL. We're going to kick off by talking about the Royal Challengers Bangalore versus KKR match, in which KKR had a very, very comfortable win against the RCB, in which I, as an RCB fan, am very disappointed because I just thought we were absolutely terrible. So we're going to react to that game. I'm going to talk about why I'm upset with RCB. James is going to offer us the neutral perspective, and then we'll talk about the Delhi Capitals versus Rajasthan Royals game that happened yesterday. So, James, from a neutral's perspective, how bad were RCB in your estimate, and how good were KKR in your estimate?
Okay. I'm gonna say that RCB didn't start off too badly. I actually thought they started off really well. I thought Kohli looked really good. He's a very kind of his form is very, very promising for RCB. When they've done well in the past, it's because Kohli's pretty much carried them. And if he's in good form, then really they should only need a few players to have to be able to chip in, and they can get up to some decent totals. It didn't quite happen today. Just a bit of I don't know, a bit of a capitulation in the middle, not able to build a proper rock solid partnership with Kohli, meant that they slowed down. And despite Dinesh Karthik being an absolute rock star every time there's a T20 World Cup in the same year, they didn't quite get over the line and probably ended up, I don't know, 10, 15 runs short, I'd say. Because the way they started, and even from the first two balls that Mitchell Stark bowled to Kohli, then the first ball, Kohli just nudges it down to third man for four. And the words he says to Faf is no movement, no swing. And the next ball is like dead on, and he just plays it very easily. I think he knocks it for a single. And from that point, you're thinking, right, RCB should be looking at least 60 in this power play. And it was, I don't know, I felt like they got themselves out more than anything else,
Mm.
which is probably the issue. I want to know a not neutral standpoint. I want to know your biased opinion of how they started off at least.
Well, I was quite happy with a few things from the RCB innings. For one, Cameron Green and Glenn Maxwell didn't really perform in the first two games, but they both made pretty decent scores this time round, ably supporting Virat Kohli. Um, there was no one other than Dinesh Karthik who really asserted themselves with that 200 plus strike rate. And that was missing from RCB today. And I think that is kind of down to a few things. For one, Faf du Plessis got out early. He's the one who can normally provide that impetus at the start of the innings, and he played a dreadful scoop shot, really, after playing quite a nice scoop shot in the ball before. But that happens. It's 2020. You're going to get out playing those shots. But yeah, someone like Glenn Maxwell, Cameron Green, who are just kind of finding their feet in this competition at the moment, it was kind of good the way they played, but it meant that someone like Rajat Patidar, Anuj Rawat, Dinesh Karthik, we're again relying on them to kind of make that big score. And I'm sure things will get easier for the batting side as the competition goes on. I don't see us changing the batting lineup that much. Unless someone goes horribly out of form, I see this being our batting lineup for the rest of the tournament. The only change that I can potentially see is Rajat Patidar being replaced by someone like Mahapal Lomror as like the first choice player. That's the only change that I can envisage, which is promising. Um, RCB's issues came more with their bowling. I mean, when you look at the KKR bowling, you've got someone like Mitchell Stark, who is an out and out pace bowler. That's that's his skill is bowling quick and bowling Yorkers. And it was no surprise that he went the most runs today for KKR. He went 11.75 and over. You look at someone like Harshit Rana, who's just come off the back of a really good um, finish to the previous game when KKR beat Sunrisers Hyderabad when Sunrisers had a lot of things going in their favour. You've also got Andre Russell, who is more of that skillful bowler, will bowl a lot of change ups, and they bowled really well. They bowled how you're supposed to bowl on this pitch. And then when you turn it to the RCB innings, the only bowler from RCB who looked willing to bowl those change of deliveries, looked to bowl the bouncer effectively, was Vijay Kumar Vaishak. Everyone else just bowled pace on deliveries, and if they bowled it short, it was just mid high or completely over the batsman's head. And yeah, it was disappointing watching the RCB bowlers today because they just didn't bowl well at all, in my opinion. I don't know what your thoughts were on their bowling.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite nice being able to kind of contrast the two types of bowling that we saw from either side because um, spin didn't do well for Sunil Narayan, Varun Chakravarti, but it was
Mm,
very good from Anil Kulroy. And in the same way, like Mayank Dagar, I think he's quite a promising person for RCB. He seems actually quite competent. Um, and then it was just all seam from there. And you're right, the only person that actually changed what they were doing, which is really what you need to do in the Chinnaswamy. You can't go with pace on. We saw what Harsh Patel did. And in fairness, he does try to change it up. But in the final over, when it was Punjab versus RCB, he bowled a pace on bouncer. And actually, bouncers at the death, they're not that successful. There's a cricket analyst that the cricket nerds follow on Twitter called Dan Weston, and he was part of the Punjab Kings sort of think tank in the mega auction, and he wrote a whole piece on how bouncers at the death that it's just not the good percentage play because even a top edge can kind of go for six, and that's kind of what we saw from RCB was it was not that intelligent in terms of bowling.
no.
It was almost like premeditated what their bowling plan was going to be, and they stuck to it and didn't adapt to what the conditions were suggesting they needed to do. And that's obviously a big shame. And it was a it was a very very easy. KKR just kind of walked it, didn't they?
Yeah.
There are two players today that I want to talk about, and in particular that kind of interest me. The first one's Rajat Patidar because I feel sorry for him. He had the world at his feet, and it seems to be slipping away. And I just think he needs to get out of his head. I think he's a very, very good player. So that's the first one I want to talk about. And then the second one is Sunil Narayan because, because it's the most RCB thing in the world that the pinch hitter that once upon a time was in an amazing partnership with Chris Lynn at the top of the order for KKR. And since then, he hasn't really done that much at the top of the order. He's it's like one in every 20 innings he does okay. But today, he was an absolute dream. If
Mm,
you're a KKR fan, he was brilliant. He was
yeah.
smashing it all over the shop, and it had to be against RCB, didn't it? It was never
Yeah.
going to happen against anybody else.
No, I mean, looking at the Sun on Arena innings, you just look at that and you think there are so many better batsmen in world cricket who, like Faf du Plessis, if you compare his batting with Sun on Arena, it's like night and day. Faf du Plessis is so much better a batsman than Sun on Arena. But if Faf du Plessis came out swinging his bat against the KKR bowlers, he wouldn't have made the same innings that Sun on Arena hit, which shows that RCB bowled badly against him because Sun on Ryan, he's not a great batsman. So realistically, he shouldn't be having innings like that. And like you said, it happens one every so innings. He's got one of the fastest 50s in the IPL, and it was against RCB. And I think from an RCB's fans' perspective, we're probably, well, I am, and I assume that others feel the same. I'm fed up with seeing us just bowl pace on at these players who are just swinging a bat, just bowling either in the slot or half trackers. It's like, when are you going to learn that this way of bowling is just stupid and it's not going to get you anywhere? Like, how many times have RCB leaked the most runs in the competition? So many times. It's like, you need to just learn. But that's me ranting, rant over. Sun and Orion, that aside, I do think that the intensity of the Kolkata Knight Riders batting was a lot better than the RCB batting. It's like RCB were intense for like a period, and then it kind of quietened down through the middle overs, and that's kind of the way Kohli operates. Whereas you look at Venkatesh Iyer, Phil Salt at the start, Shreyas Iyer, they seem to have that intent to the point where when they only needed 10 runs to win off like 5 overs, they were still running hard between the wickets. They were still going for those risky twos. And that thing is what Calcutta Knight Riders want to see from their team. They're wanting to see that intensity, and they're a team that can challenge because they've got skillful bowlers. Harshit Rana looks really good, and they've got the batters who can strike at 160 plus without fail.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Sun and Orion thing?
Oh, I think it's quite funny, to be honest, because I would usually just put money on the fact that he's going to get a duck. He's somebody that I've seen get a duck at the top of the order more than most people. And yeah, the fact that he's hit 47 off 22 with
Mm.
5 6 is just, it sucks for RCB. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it. It's rubbish for them. But for KKR, if he can perform like that once every 3 innings at the top of the order, that is incredible. Like that.
But he's
That
not going
suddenly
to,
he's not going to. But
because other teams will bowl better at him.
but if by some miracle he does, it
Mm.
means that KKR have actually got a really good batting lineup. Like looking at them there with Rinku Singh and Shreyas Iyer not out, the fact that those two can kick on whenever they want, and then you've still got Andre Russell, Ramandeep Singh to come in. What's not to love? Like it's just very, very, very strong.
Mm.
I am. I'm finding it interesting to contrast that to RCB, where you're right. Virat Kohli, he does slow down in the middle overs, and that's not great because it does put pressure on the other batters who are usually, the first ones, or that they haven't been in for as long. It means that they have to strike a little bit fast to keep that momentum up, and then Kohli can accelerate again through the death overs. But when you've got, Rajat Patidar, Anuj Rawat getting 6 off 7 between them, it means that that's it's a big period throughout that middle that you're not getting that many runs. And fortunately, you had Dinesh Karthik to come in and almost save the day a little bit, got you up to a respectable total, but it's still not quite enough. And if there was that assistance from middle overs where, Venkatesh Iyer puts the hammer down, Shreyas Iyer, he accelerates quite nicely. Phil Salt, he's not going to let up. It just you keep that momentum, and KKR, I don't think they're the strongest team, but
No.
they have a combination that if it works, they'll win most of their games. So congratulations to KKR. Commiserations to RCB. Work to be done, but glimmers of hope. Vijay Kumar Vishat being good, and Mike Dagar, and there is, it's not all bad, but one last piece of advice for RCB is it's probably time to drop Alzari Joseph.
Oh yeah, I mean, watching him bowl today, it's like, has he been bowling well in the nets, or have people been carting him around? Because he bowled so many short balls, and I think there was a stat that his first over, his record in the IPL is his first over averages an economy of 11 and over. Like, that's not good enough. You need to be coming in and being able to bowl your first over and go for 5 or 6, especially if you bowl in one of the first 2 overs. And to be going at 11s, it just shows that he's just, I don't know, maybe not smart enough as a bowler. I'm not sure. I don't want to be too
Perhaps
harsh on it,
it's probably
but I
lack of
think there are
experience, isn't it?
lack of experience for sure. But there are probably, if you look at the overseas players, like having a Tom Curran who prides himself on his change deliveries, today was probably the pitch for that, not the banging half trackers pitch. Someone like Lockie Ferguson, even, I know he bowls at a good pace, but he also has a good slower ball, and he's okay at the death. Even Reece Topley, I'm just thinking about all the other overseas fast bowlers we've got to hand. If Alsari Joseph is bowling as badly as he has done the first few games, yeah, we need to see someone different come in.
For me, Reece Topley at the top, Reece Topley at the top makes the most sense because he takes those wickets in the power play, and he also quite often bowls quite frugally at least, and that is the opposite of what you're getting from Alzari Joseph.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's carry on. Rajasthan versus Delhi Capitals was the 9th match. So again, we're not going in chronological order, but we're probably going in order of the matches that interest us the most. However, this was interesting to me because
Mm.
seeing Riyan Parag actually fulfill some of his potential is quite rewarding when you follow the Side Mushtaq Trophy and you see how good he is in that. And then you see him completely fail in the IPL season after season. For him to finally come good, and he's so young still. He's only
Mm.
22. And he feels like he's been around the IPL for years and years and years. And it's probably because he has. But he's actually come good. And for the second match in a row, he's performed. And this time with his best knock, I'd say, in the IPL. It was a
Oh, for
very
sure.
mature innings. Um, Rajasthan were 36 for 6.
36 for
And
3, you mean?
yeah, 36 for 3. Um, yeah, don't know where 6 came
They
from.
they somehow got a wicket back.
Yeah, I don't even know. But yeah, they were 36 for 3. The wheels looked like they were coming off. There were, two batters with strike rates of lower than 100, and that was Jaiswal and Butler. So quite surprising. And Riyan Parag, he absorbed some of the pressure and he put it right back on the bowlers. And he ended up hitting 84 off 45. It was a masterclass. But I'd say he was overshadowed by the absolute legend of the game, which was Ravichandran Ashwin.
Mm,
I was very, very impressed with him at 5. What were your thoughts
yeah.
on Rajasthan as a whole?
Yeah, it was just a bit of an interesting situation to see. It's kind of like the Narayan against Kolkata, against RCB sort of situation where you've got Yashasvi Jaiswal and Joss Butler, two of the best batsmen at the moment. Like Joss Butler in 2020 cricket, Yashasvi Jaiswal just in general. Sanju Samson, who's just come off a really good performance. For them all to fail, and then Ravi Ashwin to come in and then strike the ball around like it's the best batting pitch in the world, essentially.
Mm.
I mean, he didn't take long to get going, and he kind of shifted the momentum. Took a lot of pressure off Riyan Parag, which I think was necessary, and it kind of meant that ability to think, okay, we've got a top order collapse. We need someone to come in to save our death batters like Dhruv Jurel and Shimron Hetmyer for the end. I think that's really promising for Rajasthan. For Delhi, they'd be a bit disappointed because their bowling is their strong point. You think about players like Kuldeep Yadav, Anrik Norkia, really strong, and they didn't do so well in terms of removing that partnership. Because if they'd broken that partnership early, brought in someone like Dhruv Jurel or Shimron Hetmyer in early, then that kind of creates a few more problems for Rajasthan because after they had to, they only had 4 bowlers. They have Trent Bolt carded in to come in at number 8, and we know he can't really bat that well. So yeah, it was good from Rajasthan to kind of stem the pressure and keep going, but also disappointing from Delhi not to take that breakthrough wicket when they had the chance.
Mm. And I wouldn't say Delhi bowled terribly as a whole. It was
No.
just they couldn't get Parag out, and it was really, you know, I don't know. Axar Patel, I thought I thought was brilliant, and I thought Kuldeep Yadav looked all right, but it was just it was an absolute clinic, and it shows that when you don't just let your head drop and when you stop the rot early in an innings, you can still make a decent total. And 185 on that pitch
Mm,
turned out to be sort of more than enough for Rajasthan. And I would say there was quite a big difference in the death bowling ability between the two teams. There was a bit of a gulf there
mm,
because while Delhi looked really good in the first few overs bowling, Khalil Ahmed and Mukesh Kumar, they looked like they had it on a string. At the death, Kumar and Nortje looked rubbish. Like it was kind of similar to RCB where it was like almost brain dead death bowling.
mm,
And when you contrast that with the way that Avesh Khan bowled and Sandeep Sharma, it was night and day because they are two players, especially Avesh Khan, who I'm really impressed with actually. The way that he actually tries to hit his Yorkers, and that is the percentage play. Like we talked about earlier, the bouncers in the last few overs, it's not that good an idea. Um,
mm.
yeah, maybe one will work, but generally you've got a better chance of success if you are going either back of a length, so not bouncer, but just an awkward height, sort of, I don't know, there-ish,
Yeah,
um,
that
or
works.
or you're going for the toes if you're going for that Yorker. And Avesh Khan, he has that ability. He goes for the Yorker. He gives it a go, and even the low full toss has been proven to actually work out sometimes.
Yeah. I think part of it is that, well, there's two things for me with the you can be a not great death bowler. Like I think of someone like Tushar Deshpande. For me, he's not really a death bowler, but when he bowled against RCB in that first game, he was trying really hard. When Dinesh Karthik was trying to hit straight, he was trying really hard to just consistently bowl that wide Yorker. And you could see he had a smart plan in mind. It's like the batsman's trying to hit me straight or leg side. I'm going to go wide of off them. I might not be the greatest death bowler in the world, but I'm a professional bowler. This is what I do for a living. I'm going to try my best to get that. And yeah, you felt like Anrik Norkia wasn't really bowling to a plan. As you said, it's kind of a bit mindless. The other thing we're seeing is I don't think Delhi fielded that well when Parag and Ashwin were going about their business. There's a few slips here or there, and the fielding this tournament. Some teams have had good fielding performances, but the catching in particular, there's been loads of drop catches already, and it's just not quite up to standard. And it's showing because like the RCB game, there were loads of drop catches. In that game, there were a couple of drop catches, and it's just, yeah, we're hoping that we see that the fielding standards improve because that's how you're gonna save 10, 20 runs in the field for sure. Um, but overall, I thought the way that Rajasthan went about their bowling was very impressive, especially given that David Warner and Mitchell Marsh looked very good at the top of the order. David Warner in particular, um, and he just seems to find ways of getting out when he looks like he could just keep going all day.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, David Warner to me, he seems to. I don't know if he thinks this is his last year playing in the IPL, but he seems to have um, gathered a bit of his old IPL self, which I think a lot of teams should be wary of.
Yeah, absolutely. We did get a CNQ, and this kind of it feeds in really nicely to what I was thinking, just based on what you said, which
Mm.
was and it was about the RCB game, and I think it applies to this. So it was from Look Who's Watching, and he asked, "Hey nerds, do you reckon the defeat today of RCB is more because of the poor auction they've had, not investing in a single high profile spinner, and not picking quality pace bowlers?" Now we can get onto the RCB side of that after. However, um, applying the kind of the auction and just squad setup and squad composition to this Delhi side, I think is quite an interesting one because they retained Prithvi Shaw for 7.5 crore. That's quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And Delhi Capital Management have said we just can't fit in Prithvi Shaw into this side because Warner and Marsh do really well for Australia. They're the ones that we want to open with. And it's showing that they've made a decent decision in opening with Warner and Marsh, but that's potentially bad planning on their part in retaining Prithvi Shaw if you've got no intention of using him for quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they've got Ricky Bowie, who is supposedly a pretty decent middle order batter, but could they have invested a little bit more into their middle order and their Indian stocks for that role, because there seems to be a greater abundance for that position. So I think there's potentially an error there. And I did see a stat that somebody put out on Twitter, and I can't remember who it was, so I can't give them credit. But they basically showed how much squad value each team had put in to their starting 11. So,
Yeah.
Punjab, I think, was something like 80 crore. So it's like most of their high value players are starting in their 11, which would suggest that their auction, the planning was there, and it translates to who they're playing on the pitch. Delhi, on the other hand, in their first match, I think they were only fielding a team worth about 50 crore as
Mm.
their starting 11. And I think this side here was about 60 or something. And it's like, so it's not anywhere near their full amount which shows potentially it was a little bit of poor planning. And I want to get your view on the RCB side of that question as well.
Well, I'll start with Delhi Capitals first as that example, given that they could have picked. They've got Jai Richardson as their backup overseas seam bowler, and he's not necessarily proven. So, not having Prithvi Shaw, knowing that you're going to open up with David Warner and Mitchell Marsh, that would lend itself to getting a better backup overseas seamer, or putting a lot of money towards getting a proven Indian death bowler or a young up and coming death bowler, something along those lines, just to bolster that. And I think RCB could have done similar. I mean, they spent a lot of money on quite a lot of seam bowlers because that's probably where they're lacking, like the overseas seam bowlers. They don't really need any other overseas batsmen because they've got Faf, Glenn Maxwell, and Cameron Green. They don't need that. So I understand that. But in terms of the Indian point of view, or even the overseas point of view, we just weren't able to pick up that outstanding bowler who's going to give you 4 overs for not many runs, or that outstanding spinner. And we probably could have saved, like, we could have not bought 2 overseas fast bowlers and gone for Hasaranga again, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he only went for
But
1.5 crore in the end, didn't he?
yeah, because realistically, what you need is a world class spinner, a world class fast bowler, who can bowl at the death and at the beginning, and 3 or 4 batsmen who are going to strike at 150 most games. And there are some squads that have that in their team. Mumbai Indians have that for sure. Chennai Super Kings definitely have that. So it's about building those players in your squad, seeing where those gaps are, and making sure they're filled. And yeah, teams like RCB and Delhi Capitals will struggle if the players who aren't quite there don't step up and play that strong role. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the other teams go about it, because this 2 bouncer rule has kind of been a blessing and a curse in
Yeah.
some respects. We're seeing some players really benefit from it and use it really well, and other teams, they just end up bowling loads of wides and just relying too heavily on the short ball. What are your thoughts on that before we close?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think you're absolutely right. It's working both ways. I think there is there are some players that use it to their advantage and almost just let it play as a psychological trick to the batter, knowing that there could be another one coming, whereas others feel like they almost need to use those 2 bounces every over,
Mm.
and it encourages them to bowl more short balls, which makes them slightly more predictable. Especially because they might bowl one that's like shoulder height or just below shoulder that they get away with. It's not counted as the short one, so just keep on bowling them, and
Mm.
it can lend itself to slightly unintelligent bowling. So yeah, I completely agree with you. But that's where we'll leave it. Don't forget to send in your Cricket Nerds questions with the hashtag CNQ, and we'll do our best to answer them in these videos. If we don't answer them in these videos, then we will definitely answer them in our members exclusive videos, which you can watch all of them. We are doing regular extra content. So we're not doing any less content on, that's free to watch, but we are doing a lot of extra content that is members only. If you want to be a certified cricket nerd, it is very, very cheap, but it is the single best way to support us. So the link for that will be in the description, or you can hit the join button. I think that shows up if you're on desktop. Either way, there are plenty of ways that you can find out how to become a member. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the continued support. We will still be doing a load of IPL content, so subscribe if you want to see more of that. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.